Live For Nation, this is Paul. Excited to really introduce a special guest today. With me is Sean Morin.
Good to be here, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's our honor. We're actually sitting in the theater at the Frontier Cafe in Brunswick, and this is a very important location for To Live For because this is where we hosted our first live show, Inspired. And it's through that show that we met Sean, because Sean is the manager of all the live events here. He's the manager of the theater, and I feel like I'm missing a component there.
I think that's really it. I think you've done a great job.
And as soon as I met Sean, I'm like, we've got to meet. I'll edit this out. So as soon as I met Sean, it's like we've got to introduce Sean to our audience out there, and I'm grateful that you've taken time to meet with us today because you're busy.
Busy is part of my life. We can get into that later.
Yeah.
I enjoy it.
But despite Sean's busyness, one of the vibes that I picked up right away, and then Donna Maria did as well, is you've got to be one of the most calmest, smoothest, most positive people. And given all that's going on here at the Frontier Cafe, and by the way, there's construction going on, so you might hear some hammers, some drills, and just bear with us for that. But you just stay consistent.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. It doesn't always feel that way. I maybe internalize it and think twice before saying anything out loud.
Yeah. Have you always been kind of calm, cool, and collected, the 3 C's?
You know, it's hard to reference that from the inside. I've always been me.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think that it's maybe a part of my pragmatist approach of what's the simplest way to get something done, or what's the most clear way of communicating an idea to someone. And I think that it's important to have a sense of clearness in communication, and clearness in communication comes from being calm, or being collected, or being cool, or being a cucumber.
We're gonna come back to that because I think that's part of your foundation, and I try to learn where did our guest foundation come from? How was that foundation built? But Sean is the manager of this theater and all the live events here at the Frontier Cafe. The Frontier Cafe has a specific vision or mission in both the restaurant but also here in the theater. Can you share a little bit about that vision?
Yeah. So it all references Gil's. So let me backtrack. Michael Gilroy is the owner of Frontier, and he's got a vision that comes from his backpacking expedition leading adventures that he had when he was in Kazakhstan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and then in other places of the world in North America as well. He's been in Antarctica for a stint with a long story that maybe he'll share with you sometime. But then he's also managed theaters in Colorado, and he's had a fairly active life when it comes to community, culture, and arts. And what he did with Frontier when he settled in Maine was he wanted to create a hub for his community,
right.
Be it Brunswick, Bath, or any of the surrounding areas, the catchment being maybe as large as Portland or Augusta. And the focus was to really create a meeting ground, a community, a center, a hub, centered around food, film, and art. And
food, film, and art.
That's where it started. And then when I came on board about 7 years ago, because I'm a musician, I brought in a fairly large musical piece to it as well. And that's our track. That's our mission right there. It's simple, just to connect the community to food, film, music, and arts.
That's awesome, and that's part of, that resonates with To Live For. We're about connecting. We're about sharing these inspirational stories, but we feel your story is inspirational. So here you have this opportunity to connect people through the music aspect at the Frontier, through the art aspect as well. and then through the theater aspect. What is that like for you on a daily basis? Creating those connections, bringing these shows in, and working with a variety of different artists.
It's a lot of communication, and that communication has led me to great relationships with a lot of community partners, businesses, ideals that we believe in, not necessarily as Frontier, but as a community. And we work strongly with these partners to sort of help us steer our mission, but also to give our community an outlet to have their voice heard.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So you came into the Frontier with this music background. Tell us a little bit about that. How did that emerge in your life? Your interests and then your passion in music.
Yeah, music's been around for me since I was a little guy. I think I could reference some of my first memories listening to New Kids on the Block. That brings that.
Oh, you are so young.
I know. Well, I was going to say it dates me, and then I heard myself say that in my head, and I thought I shouldn't say that because to some people they might think that's a fairly new thing. New Kids on the Block was a sort of late 80s, early 90s craze, and I remember drumming on my grandmother's couch with some chopsticks and dancing my little behind off. It was it just struck me. I felt it from a young age, and I think I got my first piano lesson when I was 6 or 7, and then I started playing the guitar when I was, call it 10 or 11, something like that. I'm 33 now, so I've been playing for, let's just say 20 years, and I still love it. That's an important thing to mention. You say that about your craft, and if it's your craft and it's your work, and it also happens to be an art, you know, an art-oriented piece, I feel like you can get some people that are maybe a little tainted or torn from that piece. And I'm still madly in love with it. So
Absolutely.
It's driven all of my life. From going to school for music at Berklee College of Music in Boston when I was at high school, coming back to Maine and attending University of Maine at Augusta with professors like Rick Nelson, Frank Mosseri, Don Stratton, the late Don Stratton, and some other fantastic musicians that I was peers with at that time. And I've gone back to teach at University of Maine at Augusta. I'm currently teaching at Maine College of Art. I program here, of course, at Frontier, which is seen through the lens of music and art, so I consider that in the same realm. And I'm also a producer and engineer and songwriter for many artists in and around the Portland area.
Right, and I want to talk a little bit about that. So you grew up and you went to school playing different instruments, and while you still do that, you really have pursued a different avenue as well, and that's the production part, the composing part, and coaching, teaching others. How did that kind of divergence happen where you realize, hey, I don't want to just play this, I want to create it and help others create it?
Gosh, you know, the teaching thing never came to me as something that I was going to do. It was, so to answer the piece about the coaching, the teaching, and the sort of mentoring aspect, life, man, it's so funny how it happens. I was in college, I had just come back from Boston, and I was now finishing up my college track at University of Maine at Augusta. And in my first semester, I got a call from a nearby music center that had been given my name. Someone had referenced me as being someone that could teach lessons, privately, guitar lessons specifically. And I still to this day don't know who gave my name. I'm assuming it was one of the professors from the university. I asked around, but no one reported back. And if you know anything about a university, everyone's schedules are you know, very specific to their own track, so I didn't always catch up with everyone on a day-to-day basis. But I said yes, and that's a part of me that I think is that I treasure. That I say yes to everything as much as possible. Even though it was way out of my comfort zone, I had never taught before, and as I mentioned, it wasn't something that I was necessarily even privy to. I wasn't even necessarily wanting to do that. But once I started teaching privately at this music center in Augusta, I found myself really enamored with that process.
Right.
It's a hugely rewarding process. It's also, I learned very quickly that it's incredibly exhausting. It takes a different part of your brain. We're at Frontier, we're in school, we're in other aspects of my life. My brain is more focused on small oriented administrative tasks to get from point A with maybe starting an event to seeing an event all the way through. The teaching is bobbing and weaving around someone's brain and how they're perceiving that information. And if it doesn't work this way, you come at it from a different angle. And if it doesn't work that way, you keep trying until we get to that understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. People learn in different ways, so you're trying to figure out how to make that learning happen.
Exactly, exactly. And I find it incredibly rewarding when we get to that end goal of someone fully comprehending what it is that our theoretical task or physical task is that we're learning.
Right.
So that's how I got to that. It was a very simple, someone threw it on my lap and I said yes, I was open to it. And a year or two after I graduated college, they brought me right back into the circuit teaching at that same college, and that saw me through to other teaching opportunities.
I imagine you being a very positive teacher.
I'd like to think so. I certainly hope so.
Yeah. So you're enjoying that aspect. When you get to go to Maine College of Art or UMA to teach, it sings to you, pardon the pun.
I love it. It does sing to me. It does.
And here at the Frontier, what I pick up from you is that you have passion here as well. So you just said that you say yes to everything, or as much as you can. And we use the expression you're calm, cool, and collected as a cucumber. So I have got to ask, what are you doing in your daily life that A, feeds this passion that you have in helping others and in creating relationships and creating music? But how are you staying balanced? How do you stay in that calm space?
That's a great question, Paul. I don't necessarily think that my answer is going to feel rewarding because I would say that I would reference myself as being particularly unbalanced on this day. Maybe not this very day. We're here on a Friday and at the end of April, but for the last, call it year or 2 years, because I say yes so often, the balance comes in small doses, right? It's tough. I feel like to look deeply at it, it's my car drives into work, be it to Brunswick, to Portland, to Augusta. I take those very seriously. They're important to me. I enjoy traveling because it's a moment to pause and be reflective. I get to, it's my thinking space.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have it in the shower. I have it in my car. On my drives to and from work. I call it compression and decompression. Compression, getting myself into the vibe of what I'm about to do. And then on my way home, allowing it to escape, just to push it out and release. Being a musician, one would think that I listen to a lot of music in my car, and it's quite the opposite. Most musicians will tell you that they don't listen to music. And that's, for the most part, very true across the board. When I ingest music, I'm doing it at dedicated times where I want to listen to a new record, and I find that moment, usually when I'm home, when I'm at my sound system, at my computer, at my table. But in the car, I listen to a lot of podcasts. And podcasts, I can't tout them enough. They are thoughtful, if you can find the right ones, engaging ways to meditate in a sort of communal space. Even though you're by yourself, you're sharing that thought process that's being transmitted to the world, to engage in a particular story or in an idea in that setting. And I really find comfort and balance when I'm in my car listening to those.
I can just sense the energy that's being connected in your car. Because like you said, even though you're alone, you're actually part of a community. And you're picking up the energy from that person or people you're listening to on the podcast. And I can see how that gets you ready for here at work.
Yeah.
Where or how are you finding time for the music in your life, for your composing and your playing of music?
It's another great question. These are great questions. I didn't prep for any of this. This is just stream of conscious.
It all flows.
I like it. Well, I'll step back a second and say, in addition to the podcasts, it's important to know that I have a routine in my life at the beginning of my day and at the end of my day. I always start my day. My partner has an 8-year-old currently. She'll be 9 this year, and she gets her ready for her day at school. I wake up, I make our bed, and I come downstairs and I make us breakfast. So after she brings her to school, we have breakfast there, and we always have coffee together on the couch. That's an important part of our day, and if we don't have that, I often feel a little unfocused. And it's not the coffee, it's the conversation and the sort of the moment of respite in my day where I find 10 to 15 minutes to just pause and stay connected to myself and to stay connected to my partner. And the end of the day works similarly, and that varies anywhere between 6 o'clock or midnight, depending on my day and when I'm coming home, where we sit on the couch or sit in bed, sit up, and we just recap. And it's important to stay connected as a partner that way and to myself. Going back to the other piece of it, the question that you just asked regarding where do I find time for music, I find time for music in literally every gap of a day that isn't dedicated towards my other jobs. For instance, if my usual day's routine is to come into Frontier for 10 a.m., if I have an hour in the morning after I've had that coffee and that moment with my partner, I will go into my studio and I will create. And it's not usually something where I'm having to spin an idea at that table. It's usually coming from a place where I've already spun the idea in my head and I'm just going to execute it. So it's just a very quick, how can I produce something in a small amount of time? The ideas the times where ideas need to spin and weave, those are usually happening throughout the day.
Right.
In and around all of my other tasks and my communication. It's part of the art brain, right? When you have an art brain, you're filling in all of the empty spaces, or you're being inspired by all of the things that you're surrounding yourself with to fill in those empty spaces with art.
It's almost, to me, I have an image of a blank sheet of music that you start with every morning, and your composition occurs, gets filled in as the day unfolds. And at the end of the day, you have a composition for that day, but it's almost like you have a composition ready for your studio, although it might take a few days to finalize that composition in the studio.
That's an awesome way of looking at it, Paul. I've never thought of it that way, and it's I got to take that one with me, put that in my back pocket. That's a great explanation.
But so for you to make that journey, you have to be incredibly open and vulnerable to the next moment. And that takes strength and courage. Where does that come from? How did Sean learn to really just be in the moment and to let the next moment or note or canvas or composition unfold as it unfolds?
Wow.
Did you have that gift as a kid? Do you remember that?
It's such an interesting question because I see myself as being someone that often has to think forward and has to reference the past. And as someone that strives to be present and in the moment, I don't often give myself the credit of being that way. So you're referencing something that I don't see firsthand as easily as you are suggesting that you see it. I'm a planner, right? I have to plan for my classes. I have to plan for booking an event space. And I have to be cognizant of everything that's happened in the past, whether it be my past students or past events, to reference those future things. Sort of stay present and to be open for those musical moments or those inspirational moments, even in teaching or booking or music making. I would say that's something that maybe I've just had innately. It's hard for me to reference that because I feel particularly challenged in that department.
So, I think you feel that challenge inside, but I have to let you know that whenever we worked with you, whenever I worked with you in putting this show Inspired together, no matter what was going on here at the Frontier or in your personal life, I never felt any of that. I only felt you. So I'm just here to let you know that you may feel that inside, but whatever you're putting out energetically, it's like you're here for whoever you're with at that moment. And I think that's rare. I think it's very rare in this culture.
I agree, because I see that a lot. When you work at a restaurant, and I work on the theater aspect of this large establishment, but it's also a very popular restaurant. You see people very quickly going in and out of their day, and it's very hard to focus on being present in the moment and being kind, even sometimes. It is not going to get me any. One thing that I know that deep down inside, and maybe this is part of who I am innately, is that if I don't treat someone kindly and don't treat someone with like they are offering me something, then we're not going to get to the place that we need to get to in the end together. We're going to be ununited, and it's not going to make for a good event or learning or music making, any of those aspects of my life. We're not going to get to that end product together.
That's pretty cool wisdom.
I'm saying that out loud right now, and I guess it's something that's deeply buried in me, but I've never said that out loud before.
Right. Well, actually, I think the secret to any business, relationship, whatever we're doing, it's all about communication. And one of the things that you're laying out there is, look, I'm going to be there in that moment with whoever I'm with, communicating at the deepest, most respectful, caring, supportive level possible.
Yes, and I think something that I know about myself that I have said before is that communication is everything. It's not even what you say sometimes, it's the way you say it. My grandmother, she's the best. Hi there.
Sorry.
Nope, we're having a meeting here. That's okay. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So my grandmother is a huge influence on A, my entire family, and B, like everyone that she's ever touched. So it's important for me to reference her in this conversation.
That's what I was trying to go at earlier. I was trying to figure out where
it comes from.
So
my grandmother, man, we call her my nanny or nana. There have been two two people, I think, that my nanny and gosh, it's really just her. I'm gonna retract that. You may want to edit that out to not make reference to another person there. My nanny, or my grandmother, is an incredibly open and devoted soul to both her family and to anyone else that she's met in her life. She's passionate, not to any one particular thing, or if there was one particular thing, it'd be communication and openness to the world, to information. She never strives to know everything, and she's constantly open to other people's perspectives. Perspective's huge. That's like everything in life. There's going to be a million different ways to look at one situation, and she has taught everyone in the family, just by her natural ways, that you don't need to know every perspective, but you need to understand and be open that there are others. And I think that's invaluable to music making, to art making, right? It's a completely subjective approach. There is no right way to do it. You teach a conventional wisdom, common practices, but then you open up the world to these students, to others, and you say, there's so many different avenues for you to go down. Here's a couple. Feel free to venture onto your own paths. That could be the same for an event. This is the conventional way to do it. I might even have strong suggestions on ways that we get to the end goal. But if there are new approaches to get to that end goal, I'm open to those as well.
Right. Yeah, when we worked with you, I sensed that you were open to what we felt we needed. And it was really cool to communicate through that together, what you needed to take care of from a frontier perspective, and then being open to what we wanted. Back to your grandmother. So in my book, you just described you. I'm just saying.
Well, that's huge.
So I applaud your grandmother for being an amazing role model and inspiration and teacher, you know, for your whole family. So one of the questions that I ask everybody I interview is, if there's someone that's listening to this interview and they're kind of stuck in their journey, they're not quite sure which way to turn, they think they may know what their passion is, but they're not sure how to get there, I would say you're living in your passion. If you could narrow everything down to one piece of advice that you would have for someone that's listening to this, one nugget of wisdom to help them perhaps get on that path that they're extremely excited about, what would that one nugget of wisdom be?
I guess I preach saying yes. I preach to say yes to things that you're uncomfortable with. That in the initial moment you might say, I don't know how I'm going to do that, or I don't know that I've ever done anything like that before, to say yes to it. Because I think deep in all of us, there is hard work and discipline. And if there isn't, I suggest that you get some, because I think that's a key piece to saying yes. I think those two go hand in hand. Working hard, trusting yourself that you can do anything. And then the other side is saying yes to challenge yourself.
Right. Love that. I love that. I love that a lot. All right, so I want to just allow you an opportunity to talk about how people can connect with you. So you have a Facebook page that is
I have a couple. So I have a personal profile where I post most of my stuff, although I've been a little lax about that lately, which is just Sean Morin. That's my name. SeanMorin. And then I also have a music page, which is just referenced as Sean Morin Music. Both of those are, facebook.com/bunch-of-numbers/Sean Morin, facebook.com/bunch-of-numbers Sean Morin Music. If you type it into the search engine, I'm usually the first to come up in that area.
And I actually provide links wherever I post this interview, so that's there too. But you have a website.
the website is referenced the same way. It's SeanMorinMusic.com.
And if I go to your website, what am I going to find?
You're going to find a very simple bio that tells you that I'm an American composer and I work in teaching and composition, producing, songwriting. It doesn't reference Frontier at all because I consider that a different job, and I really strive to sort of compartmentalize those jobs in my life, although they really all amalgamate to the same, you know, beauty of music and arts and events that I love. But also on the website you'll find collaborations that I've had in the last 3 to 5 years. I try to keep it fairly current. And then music that I have made personally as well.
Right.
There's music videos, there's links to other artists that I worked with and their catalogs, and then there's a contact page.
I really appreciate your time today. We are so grateful. I can't help but think that, you know, I know that you're a composer, but I actually think that you are assisting in the composition of many lives and journeys, I think way more than you may realize. Every person that comes in touch with the Frontier and all that you're doing here, all the students that you're teaching at the different universities or colleges, your music itself, I mean, really think about it. You're impacting thousands of people. One piece of positive energy or sound or music or word at a time, you are infinitely sending out positive vibes. And I feel very blessed to know you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. You're gonna make me tear up, man.
It's my pleasure, man.
Thank you.
You rock.
Thank you, Paul. You rock. This is a beautiful thing too. I feel like I should say To Live For has been we started it here at Frontier with the first event. I should say we started it. The first event was here at Frontier, and it was such a beautifully inspiring thing that Paul and I felt connected immediately, and I had to agree to do the interview. It wasn't a question of if, it was a question of when. So thank you, Paul, and cheers to you and all that you're doing. Congratulations.
Appreciate it.
We blamed it on wasting the time we'd been given. We waited, we wanted, we could, but we didn't. It wasn't the truth.